You're welcome back. Is the guest for. Thank you, and back to Abuja here. I have our guest, Dr. Sam Amadi. Dr. Sam, all things being equal, the new tariff regime on electricity takes effect from the 1st of April 2020. What's your take on that?
Well, I think the regulator structured it well. I think in January there was this news about tariff increase, and they said they froze it for a while, just like we did when we were there, to allow for consultation. And I think what's going on now with all the feedback from consumers and operators is the way you run the sector. You want to create some degree of democracy, and we know that where there's that kind of engagement, tariffs usually, will be more cost efficient and prudent and efficient in the sense that consumers will confront operators with allegations or reports, feedback about poor services. So what we are seeing here is robust conversation. I think NEC should deepen that consultation, which is what the regulation requires, meaning that you allow the operators prove why they need those tariffs. But I think it's set up well. Maybe before April, from evidence we produce and insights, the regulator might now see what should be approved and what should not be approved. Again, you need greater rigor in terms of looking at the cost, looking at the real the data that's coming from the regulator, from the operator. Oftentimes, regulators don't have all costs are difficult to discover, and therefore the regulator need to have optimal tools to really discover those costs and then think about how to pass it to the consumer. So the structure they are put in place in terms of consultation is a good one. It needs more rigor, more public participation, and then of course at the end of the day you need to look back and take a very strategic, first it has to be science based on cost-effective tariff is a science, but it's also an art. You look at the economic profile, look at a lot of social welfare losses. Under consumption by the poor, for example, will result in loss of productivity and also loss of social welfare. And if you look at where we are on the poverty trajectory, under consumption arising from high tariff, impact on both, especially SMEs that are drivers of economic growth, would also impact. So essentially, it's a balancing act. You make sure that the operators have the revenue they need to improve the system and unlock investment. But at the same time, you want to ensure that citizens have adequate consumption because it's important for peace, for economic growth, and also for social welfare, especially in an era we are dealing with excess poverty.
Now, of great interest to observers is the fact that they're saying that even if the increase becomes effective, that it does not necessarily guarantee, adequate water supply, adequate power supply. And again, because of, dearth of infrastructure in this sector, that the increase will not necessarily, change anything, in terms of power supply.
The problem with tariff increase, and I've argued that tariff increase is not sustainable long-term way of improving the sector. The problem with tariff increase is that first is that the worst hit will be mostly unmetered customers, and that's why NEC has rightly brought out the capping proposal. It helps to reduce the exposure of unmetered consumers. Metered consumers can conserve energy and reduce their consumption. The second problem is that in the short to medium term, the kind of financial inflow that you need to improve investment, to improve the network may not happen. Again, we're dealing with limited capacity both in generation, limited capacity both in, of course, generation is slightly better than distribution, of course, transmission is slightly better. But all this may not necessarily translate in the short to medium term to very significant improvement in service. So that's the problem. Then, but it's a time lag. The question then is, what can you do? Are you going to allow this tariff to remain at a level that will further destroy the potential of the operators to serve you? So it's like a double whammy. It's a vicious circle. If you don't improve to constrain capacity to produce and to supply better service. Again, the real crisis here in this sector is lack of adequate supply. Price is a crisis, but if you put them together, people want to see more electricity, and they're going to see more electricity except there's more investment. So quick question is, how can you stimulate that a level of investment that will go also with a level of return to operators that will be sustainable? I think NEC also right in saying we can face this. Okay, the budget disc is talking about 4 years, and the NEC says, okay, by 2021 or thereabout, we can now, or 2022, we can now have fully cost reflected. So this increase will not be an increase that obviously gives too much rate shock. Increase rate will be too high. It will be an increase that perhaps is managed in a way that the federal government can step in and take some of the, some of the losses, fund those losses and allow the discos to at least get something, but not so much as to punish the consumer. Again, metering is key here. If consumers are metered, then they have, of cost recovery, cost-efficient tariff. But essentially, I think it's difficult sum, no supply and high pricing. It creates a major challenge for consumers. But if you don't deal with the good pricing, then you might not unlock the investment needed for improvement.
All right, just last question on this particular segment. The nation is grappling with the issue of metering, which you mentioned a short while ago, and one of the respondents in the report that came from Lagos was saying that, look, any increase without adequate metering, is a fallacy. Then you were as NEC, as chairman. Sure. What is this issue of metering?
Financing. Metering is a long-term investment and you recover small. So the operators ought to borrow money and invest in the long term. But they said they don't have that kind of access to fund because they're over-leveraged. They bought assets with borrowed funds, so they can't borrow that much. Second is logistics of deployment. But I think that can be dealt with. So when we're NEC, we try to do CAPME. Now, what should be done? I think the federal government perhaps should consider to move the investment they're giving to the discos into metering. So we can treat metering like a social service, okay? Government procure meter for a meter, do an audit of even an anti-poverty intervention. Instead of giving money to discos, provide those meters, and then allow the discos to charge a tariff that is now close to cost efficient or even cost efficient. What that does is that you allow citizens to now conserve power. They can reduce their consumption. You can also have a two-tiered pricing so that at some basic level, small price, and as you go higher, you pay more. We really need to provide revenue, but I think government can stop funding disco, to deal the losses and provide meter and allow discos to charge tariffs that are reasonable. So metering is essentially a problem of long investment. In 2012, I did the first metering inquiry, and we discovered that by 2012, we had about 60% unmetered customers. So from 1896, when we had the first grid power, till 2012, we had about 60% of our customers unmetered. Today, it's about 60 or 55% unmetered. So it's a legacy crisis, and to solve it requires massive public financing at the level of social service, and they allow the discos charge good tariff. All
right, we'll pause here at the moment and take two more reports before we go on a break. Now, Edo State is a host to the 461 megawatts Zora Edo power plant, the 55 megawatts Umeayo power plant, and the headquarters of the Benin Electricity Distribution Company. How have these critical power assets translated into a robust electricity supply in the area? And what will be the proposed upward adjustment in tariff mean to businesses and the people? Gochukuka Ona has the report.
Zora Edo Independent Power Plant, with a total proposed capacity of 1,500 megawatts, has the first phase of 3 open cycle gas turbines, totaling 461 megawatts, already in operation since May 2018, delivering up to 10% of the country's on-grid power. Work on the 55 megawatts Umeayo power plant in Ologbo is at an advanced stage, with the first phase of 10 megawatts nearing completion. Installation of transmission equipment, transformers, cables, and supply lines are on, and when completed, is to supply electricity to public offices and utilities, government-owned hospitals, streetlights, and other government establishments, including the Benin Industrial and Enterprise Park, and drive the Electrify Edo project.
We could see a lot of work being done at Supply Road. There will be a lot of wiring from the bypass going to the town. If that project should come up, we want to be able to cross over.
For now, the people say they are expectant as the Benin Electricity Distribution Company adopts the rationing method in the state.
There is a modern way to providing electricity. It's called acoustic. Ikpoba Dam should be enough for the whole of Benin City.
We are not enjoying lights.
At night, we don't see light. There is heat.
The TC National Grid presently gives us between 300 to 350 megawatts, which is not enough to service customers in our area of coverage. Once there's an increase in tariff, that means the service provider is able to get more revenue to be able to give you improved and better services.
The people are hopeful that with the efforts already being made in the sector at the federal and state levels, the situation of power will improve. Ogochuka Ona for Weekend 5.
As the federal government collaborates with the relevant stakeholders in the power sector to establish an equitable tariff rate, key players in Rivers State have appealed for improved power supply and availability of prepaid meters to end the estimated billing system. Ijoma Ugweke reports.
Lack of access to energy has continued to be a recurring issue in most parts of the country. About 40% of the population does not have access to electricity, as the electrification rate in Nigeria stands at 55% in urban and 36% in rural areas. As the country grapples to generate, transmit and distribute electricity, the review on electricity tariff has become necessary to improve service delivery of distribution companies.
We'll be talking about customer satisfaction, reduction in the estimated billing system, network expansion, stroke, rehabilitation. If you look at some of the network which was inherited from the Hitato PSN, some of them are aging. Of course, it requires money to rehabilitate those lines. And the money can only come through the fifth man in the value chain, which is the customer.
Other respondents are of the view that the review on the tariff require inputs from different stakeholders. This will ensure that customers are not subjected to high electricity rates, which in turn gives rise to non-payment of bills, meter bypassing, and other challenges that hinders efficient operations of service providers.
Considering that Nigerians are paying so much taxes, and this period, the economy is not really stable. To ensure that proper modalities are set, stakeholders should be involved, stakeholders should be engaged.
No light, they will use hand and write it. Is it good? It's not good. So look at me, how many rooms? Only 2 rooms. They are writing 10,000.
They, however, appealed for the availability of prepaid meters to put an end to the estimated billing system. In Port Harcourt, Ijoma Ugweke, NTN News.
Thank you, Ijoma. We'll take another break. When we return, the program continues.
That channel where you watch just now don't waka, no panic.
To me, no panic.
You go do it by yourself like ABC. Oh yeah, press the menu button on top your remote. Scroll up and down till you see Information Central. Then press OK.
Press OK.
Check the signal strength and quality. If the signal strength and quality pass 70, make you press the exit button, go back. Go advanced options, then choose installation, then go to reset and press OK.
Yeah, press OK. Wow, now you fit catch all those channels will be one miss road by yourself. Yes, make your group for no loss. You see as I do, Amadi? And I see as I do,
Go TV, live it, love it.
And I see as we do,
Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1, the delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water. Available in stores at 18 naira.
Think about them. No be only cloth this sewing machine they make. If you put food for your table and roof over person head, can you go ogbonge fashion show around the world? Find the cocoa inside every story. Go bbc.com/pidgin to see more of your world.
What is classic? Classic is Rivaldo, it's Ronaldo, it's Ronaldinho, it's Zidane, it's Messi, Hazard. Classic is a work of art. It's explosive goals.
Absolute brilliant composure.
And smooth passes.
What a story.
Classic is when you catch all this football action with the best digital picture quality. This is El Clasico. It's as classic as it gets, only on GoTV. Upgrade or stay on GoTV Max to catch 2 of the world's most notorious rival clubs in the world. Real Madrid versus Barcelona on the 1st of March on Supersport Select 4. GoTV. Live it, love it.
Sam Amadi is still here with us. Now, the issue of tariff increase, will that in any way solve the problem of unutilized megawatts that have been generated? Because we often hear that we have about 10,000 megawatts generated and we're transmitting less than 7. So how would this be of help?
Well, it's to the extent that the revenue arising from increased tariff perhaps will help the discos to invest more in their network, because some of those constrained power, stranded power as we call it, because the discos don't have the capacity in terms of network availability to receive that number of power. So sometimes that shows that the TCN wants to drop power at this spot, discos don't have capacity to pick it at that point, and they want it to drop close to themselves. Other times, they are not even able to, because of the weakness of the network, they're not able to get those power they need, and it affects the generators themselves, who will be asked to reduce their generation, because you can't produce power that cannot be consumed and therefore paid for. That's also part of why the tariff is high in some cases, because the losses are huge arising from those either generation, transmission failures and power not utilized. So we have some degree of megawatts available that should have served public use, and consumers would have had more electricity, but because the investment, the infrastructure in the network, especially from the disco side, is insufficient. So that's the argument also for tariff increase, that perhaps with this tariff increase, more investment in the network, more uptime, meaning the time that the network is up, and greater degree of power, more power come to the home, because the GENCOs will get paid, and then they will also even recover more capacity. Essentially, the whole value chain suffers for lack of revenue. But the argument is it strategic to focus too much of this revenue in the short term from high tariff increase? My argument is that there's a limit to how much tariff increase can help you address those liquidity crises. Perhaps investment, more opportunity for investment will help, but a good tariff, a sensible tariff, a pattern. You see, it's important that NEC is allowed to do the tariff, because if they show bankability, show certainty in the way the NEC manages the tariff process, then you incentivize investment to come in. Investors know that they will not recover all their money now, but they want to see certainty, they want to see a process that is bankable, regulatory certainty, that this process, even the regulator constrain the tariff, they will unlock it at a time. So it's always good not to have political intervention in tariff setting, because it allows discos. The regulator will not give you all the tariff. I'm sure NEC will constrain some part of this tariff, because they're going to look at ability to pay. They're going to look at whether it's fair and just. Just means you deserve it. Fair is, can they pay?
Can they pay?
Exactly.
Okay. All right, Dr. Sam, I'd like to we'll stop you here because time is not on our side again. Thank you for your thoughts and your time. Dr. Sam Amadi was once CEO and chairman of NEC, the regulatory agency for the power sector. Thank you once again. This is Weekend File. We'll take another break.